All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Devstream 164 breakdown. So today we have a bit of a lighter Devstream. Last Devstream we got a ton of information, and it's pretty clear that we are going to be getting, well, the follow-up to Veilbreaker, which is going to be Echoes of Veilbreaker, and that is going to be some more updates to the stuff that they've currently done, a few things here and there, some number changes that they talked about, and generally we're talking about some future stuff that we're going to be getting. And going a bit lighter for this stream as we kind of have just a month of events and stuff, as I feel like it's pretty clear DE is, working on Duviri and getting ready for that huge end-of-year update while still giving us some stuff to play with and making some changes still to what they added in Veilbreaker. With that, there's not an insanely huge amount to talk about, but we do have a bit, so let's get started. First and foremost, Echoes of Veilbreaker, the next update. They are going to be putting in the Venkra and Sprag rework, but this is appearing as a boss fight for Call, basically. So these two characters are going to be put into the Call missions, and that's where they're going to appear. They are visually going to change where they currently are, which is in Void Sabotage on the Grineer variant. This rework has actually been talked about for a very long time, but is actually finally going to be implemented. And we're also going to be getting weapon skins for them that are going to be the weapons that you see them holding. So no new weapons, but we're going to be able to get those weapon skins. There's going to be some relevancy in terms of Call and interacting with these characters, which honestly is probably the most interesting way to do it. It would definitely be really weird to be like revamping Void Sabotage, which is like a very fine mission as it is, but really probably wouldn't matter if they changed anything there. I think repurposing them as new content for Call is good. Also, there's some more, dojo rooms are being added, which people who love decorating the dojos are going to really enjoy that. Also, Drifter Warframe armor, so the Drifter is going to be able to equip a bunch of our different Warframe armor. It's not going to be all of it, they said. There might be a few exceptions here and there, but it's going to be most, we can assume, of that armor is going to be equipable on the Drifter, so more Drifter fashion. And the new, Grineer landing craft should also be there for the Echoes of the Veilbreaker update. So, there's that stuff. Also, along with that, not listed here, we're going to be getting some number changes, and they're going to be doing some more tweaks and things. No specifics on what those are, but that's also going to be in that update. And, of course, bug fixes and so on and so forth. Moving on, though, from the Echoes of Veilbreaker, we have some stuff that's coming up very quickly. Starting on October 3rd, we have the QTCC, which is the Quest to Conquer Cancer. Basically, they're going to be doing month-long, and it is a charity initiative that is going to have new ephemera, a bunch of new cosmetics and stuff. They're going to do the charity merch and stuff in the store and things once again, and that should be really good. I'm not on the official schedule. They have a sign up and stuff for it. For people to do the different streams and things. I am gonna try and get some point in this month to do one of those streams, but I'm just not sure with a million other things going on when that's gonna happen. But expect that at some point this month, because that's very good. Doing charity stuff is great. So expect that I will be on that at some point, and go check the stuff out on October 3rd. They're gonna be doing their kickoff event, and then there's gonna be a few different DE streams and stuff there. And the new ephemera is this very cool rose thing that goes around and down your back and stuff. Looks very cool. And I'll throw an image up there. But yeah, neat stuff. Doing some charity things. That's going to start on the 3rd. And then on the 5th, we are going to be getting Revenant Prime. So, Revenant Prime, Phantasma Prime, and Tatsu Prime is what the set is going to be. Phantasma Prime looks mildly different. It has a little more crit chance, which really doesn't matter for how the Phantasma deals damage. Phantasma is an amazing weapon, and the Prime will also be amazing. Unless they somehow ruin it, which I really doubt. That weapon's probably going to be absolutely immaculate, just like the regular Phantasma is right now. So I don't foresee anything bad happening there. Revenant also got some recent changes to his 2, which makes him much better. And this cool Vladimir, big cool coat and collar look that he's got going on seems very nice. Though I may continue to simply just use his deluxe skin. But yeah, he looks very cool. His Prime trailer is up over on their YouTube if you want to go check that out. And then the Tatsu Prime. So, the Tatsu is a very stylish, cool weapon. However, it suffers from poor stats. So, hopefully these Tatsu stats are considerably better. But more importantly than that, hopefully there are some changes to the Tatsu's stance. Because the stance for those weapons just got absolutely demolished with the Melee 2.0 changes. There was a lot of movement from it that was made worse. And also the modifiers and guaranteed procs and things that got removed from that stance were just absolutely egregious. So hopefully there are some changes in there to make the Tatsu just much better and just make that weapon type just way better in general as well. because I think it's a very fun weapon type that just for some reason got like its modifiers absolutely neutered for no reason. But if that stuff happens, then the Tatsu will likely have very good stats and be very good. So hopefully that will happen. Regardless, I think the Tatsu will be fine. You, of course, have like your guaranteed slashes on its heavy attacks. So at the worst case scenario, it can be built as a heavy attack melee weapon, and that'll be just fine. Then we have the Knights of Nabrus, which is our Halloween event that is returning. This is going to have some new cosmetic stuff. It's basically all that's going to be added there and a bunch of like the returning items and things. There's also going to be a haunted house decorating contest that is also going to be in there, which is cool if you're into like doing Captura and decorating your dojos and all that good business. So that's going to be on the 5th. And then Werewolframe stuff. So we have the official like color scheme that is going to be for Werewolframe. They showed off a few different ones of these, but this is the one that we are actually going to be getting. I'm a fan of it. I'm not much for like this main like kind of dark purpley color there, but I mean, if I'm not a fan of one color channel, guess what? We're going to be able to change it when the frame actually comes out. But overall, I think this is a nice, fun color scheme for them. Like the energy, like the glowing wolf heads and everything else on here looks really cool. Hopefully their abilities come together in a way that is very fun. But we'll have to wait and see for gameplay stuff. We do have her signature weapon, though, which is this big axe. So, big axe, cool. I like a big axe. However, heavy blades, which is what the big axes are struggling right now. Because, just like the Tatsu, all of their stances got neutered and basically just ruined whenever they did the melee changes. So I don't see this weapon having much use, if any. They showed a few different concepts for this, which like some of them were like the Hespar weapon type, which is like the giant scythe. And I would have much preferred that just because that weapon type has not only fewer weapons in it, but also is just better in terms of the stance that you have access to. Hopefully, this will maybe inspire some change in those heavy blade stances to make heavy blades usable and, like, decent again, because they used to be the absolute top dogs, and now they're, like, completely useless. Like, they're usable, but, like, not actually useful in really any context, which is quite unfortunate. But yeah, that's the Werewolframe update. That is, of course, still in the works. Some various frame buffs in here as we get into more, like, granular change. We have Grendel rework stuff that is like fully in the works, and the only change that was really mentioned is that all of the buffs on Grendel's 2 are going to happen all at once, as opposed to you needing to individually go to each one, which is a nice buff. That makes Grendel considerably better, being able to get all of those buffs in one go. Also makes him considerably less clunky, because you don't have to have like the cycling effect and all that business on Grendel. So that's good. I'm curious to see where they go with Grendel, because I think he has a ton of potential to be very, very fun. And then Ureli is also going to be getting a pass. Her passive is going to be buffed to be more lenient, and then also her 4 is going to be buffed to be stages. What that means is she's essentially going to be able to cast her 4, and it's going to do the big bubble that sucks all the enemies in, and it's going to be able to sit there and continue to do that until it moves to the next stage, which makes it a considerably better grouping ability, much more akin to like Vauban's 4, for example, which will be a nice boon to Ureli. So that, you know, all the changes that we got talked about here in the little bit of frame buff discussion that there was, those seem solid. And I am very curious about the Grendel rework, which is probably going to be a little more formative than just like the various little buffs that are going to be seen on Ureli. But that's that for the frame buffs. Moving on, crossplay stuff. For those that missed it, the first crossplay test happened. That was between PC and Xbox. Basically, the tech is in the game and going to be, you know, turned on, see what's on fire, turn it off, fix the fires, and so on and so forth, just as we gradually move towards having full crossplay, which is good. Just getting closer and closer to actual full crossplay, and then after they have the crossplay stuff figured out, they're going to move into cross-save, and then eventually mobile, and so on and so forth, which is all good. Just as long, you know, it seems like they're being very careful to like get feedback and like have people test things and have people in there and have like the experience, you know, together, and then have it actually fully launch whenever everything is good and working, which is, you know, what we want. We don't want them to release the crossplay update and then have everything be broken and on fire for 4 weeks. Nobody wants that. So it's good that they're doing small bursts of testing to get a feed for like problems and stuff that need to be fixed, and then moving on to more stable builds and such of it. Looking forward to crossplay whenever it's actually fully here. Going to be really nice. Now, these last 2 categories are going to be a lot of opinion discussion, and it's very important to note, for these AoE, this AoE portion of the discussion, I need you to read this very large text that I have bolded for you. It is experimental, possible changes. And that means that they have talked about potentially maybe doing this, and they have tried it on the dev build or are messing with it to see how it feels, and they are things that could potentially happen. These are not definitely happening. These are not on the way. These are things that they're messing with to potentially change some things up. The basic gist is that people don't like the like getting blown away and like having self-damage be crowd control that goes away once you get prime sure-footed. Like, you don't want to play 400 days and you get prime sure-footed and then all of like the downsides go away. And just like that being like the difference, people don't like to be blown away, and most players that are playing the game are going to get blown away by that stuff, especially if you didn't pick prime sure-footed, because then you have to wait like another 200 days before you get access to it. And at that point, you're going on 3 years of the game, which, you know, a lot, like, and it's even more than that's only if you're logging in every single day that you're going on 3 years of the game. So there's quite a bit where that is a downside, that you can't not have the CC outside of a few frames. So the experimentation is removing the self CC and adding a percent-based self-damage. So this would be no friendly fire, and you cannot one-shot yourself. What that means is if you have 100 health, let's say, for example, and you shoot something that's like right next to you, and the AoE hits you, you would take like 25%, or let's say 50% of your health as damage. So you would go down from your 100 health to 50 health. When you do that, if you do the exact same thing again and lose another 50% of your health, you would go down to 25 health. So, ostensibly, unless you were doing over 50% damage to yourself, you would have to be at like 1 damage. Like, you have to be at like 1 health remaining in order to not be able to kill yourself. Or in order to even be able to kill yourself, as it would be like progressively more percentile. So if you do like 10% damage, you go down from like 100 to 90, and then you do another 10% damage to yourself, and that's just going to take you from 90 to 81, and so on and so forth, until you are like so low and have not healed that you will then die. So that would be a potential possible change. Now, do I like this? Actually, yes. I think that as opposed to what we have now, this system is actually more lenient than what we have now. This would actually, I think, be a buff. And what I mean by that is obviously frames that have tankiness. So like, for example, Rhino, you would hit yourself with that, but like not be affected because of Iron Skin. Or if you were like Revenant, it would not affect you, or because of your Mesmer Skin. And if you were like Nezha, you would take a considerably smaller amount of damage because you have that 90% damage reduction, and so on and so forth. So for tanks, things would remain basically the same because they're all CC immune. So then this would only mean that they're CC immune, but like some of them will take a little bit of a hit to whatever defensive thing that they have going, because it's like percentage based. So there'd be that. But also, instead of just tanks being immune to the current way that it works without prime sure-footed, of course, you'd also have frames that have healing be much better set off. So frames that don't inherently have like constant status immunity, such as Oberon, for example, but Oberon has constant healing, you would be able to use AoE, have it damage you, but then just heal that damage back up. Wisp would be able to heal the entire party, so no one would have to worry about their self-damage because you're constantly healing and it's not a big deal. Frames like, of course, like Trinity would, of course, be very good for this. So all like the different healing stuff would become a way to circumvent that, as well as reducing damage that you take. So there would be more than one avenue right now, which is just crowd control immunity through either prime sure-footed for all frames or through an inherent ability that you have or an ability that you've subsumed through Helminth. Instead, you'd have not only those things, but also healing that would make it so essentially you could still use AoE weapons and have it like not CC yourself, but you would be taking a little bit of damage, but then healing it. And I think there's a lot of potential that is actually better. Because they talked about this as like being very experimental, but I do think that if they just did this, and it worked like as described, of course, that it probably would be a buff to AoE weapons, realistically. Because not needing prime sure-footed in order to do things on certain frames is actually very good for a lot of newer players. Like getting access to, like, say, the Brahma. If you are a new player and you got the Brahma within, like, I don't know, your first 100 days, let's say, you're not going to have access to Prime Sure-Footed, and you might want to play, let's say, Volt, for example. And if you're playing Volt and you need to subsume Roar for whatever piece of content you're doing, or like Mirage's Eclipse, and you just need a damage buff, you'd be able to do that, and you'd hurt yourself, so you need to include healing somewhere in your build, which most players would want to anyway. You probably include it on like your operator and use that healing. But you'd be able to use that AoE stuff without having to like get to 400 days. There'd be other solutions for you. There'd be other avenues to go through for you to counteract like the downsides of using an AoE weapon. And I think that that is potentially more interesting. I think there is value in this. Obviously, everyone hates to hear, oh, self-damage, because of how it was, because it was dog shit. Like, the old way that self-damage was definitely was worse than the self-crowd control that we have right now. But this could be going back to self-damage, but not in the same way, and that could be more healthy for the game. And also, all of the people who play Chroma would really appreciate it. And within that, saying, like, you know, all the people that play Chroma would really appreciate it, there's also the fact that it actually is an interesting avenue for just game design in general, because damaging yourself can be a positive thing depending on how a frame is designed. For Chroma, if you damage yourself, you get buffs based on that, and Chroma wants actively to do that. So Chroma would be more, like, you know, more wanting to go for a self-damage thing, because it would allow Chroma to build up his own buff. And other frames can be designed in that vein and like go down that road where they want that design aspect of AoE is no longer a disadvantage, it is an advantage. And that's just more design space for DE to play with in general, which I think is better for the game. More design space usually is good. So that's some interesting stuff with possible things that they could do for AoE. I do think overall AoE is in a much better place now than it was, because the ammo considerations matter, especially if you're going to be like fighting a boss or something like that. But they are not so great that you can't just like equip an ammo mutation and be pretty much fine, especially, you know, whenever your build is a very high level. But I think those restrictions are not so great as to make it so like there's no AoE. There's definitely still tons of AoE, but it is enough that a lot of people will choose to take at least one weapon that is single target. And I think that that is probably better for the game to have, like, oh, I have my AoE weapon and I have my single target weapon, or my weapon that's very ammo efficient, and to keep those two things kind of on all your builds. I think it's just going to be better for the game in the long term. There's definitely still a few tweaks here and there that I'd like to see, like the Icarius, for example, is a weapon that I don't think is so strong that it should not, like, it should have more ammo, because it's just not particularly great. But yeah, there's always those like different tweaks and stuff that for each individual weapon you could like tweak it up and down depending on how it's actually performing. But overall, I think that the change was good for the game. So yeah, that's the stuff with AoE. Reminder, again, at the end of this discussion, experimental possible changes just being talked about, not actively happening. Give your feedback on them. Of course, it does not mean don't talk about it, but don't freak out and act like the sky is falling. These are things that could happen that DE is discussing, not things that are definitely happening for sure that you need to explode about or anything like that. But yeah, very interesting. Also, damage attenuation. There's not much to talk about here. So damage attenuation is like the big thing with the Archons, and it's basically annoying and makes the fights take a very long time unless you use very specific strategies, which you can see in the 3 videos where I fight the Archons. I absolutely obliterate them, as is the point. But for damage attenuation, there's actually a lot to talk about here, but I took very few notes. Working to improve it for asterisk. Don't want a one-shot approach to Archons. So this is a deeper discussion about just attenuation in general and what I feel like it does, and also why it is not accomplishing the goal of what it should be. Basically, working to improve it because they know that the experience is not great. So that's fair. And they don't want you to one-shot the Archons, which is valid. Having a boss be a boss is a valid thing. I understand that from a game design perspective. You don't want to just walk in the room and shoot the bird one time and then you walk out of the room, right? That doesn't feel like a boss fight. I absolutely understand that aspect of it as well. That's important. But I think attenuation is a worse experience than just shooting the boss once and leaving. And what I mean by that is because of the way attenuation has been done, we end up in a situation where the meta for Archons is you take a frame that won't die, and you shoot the Archon in the face until it dies. And the actual meta is just to like jump scare attenuation, like I do in the fights I've shown in the videos with it, and basically don't even have attenuation be a factor in the fight and one-shot the enemy anyway. Presuming that they fixed that, the fights would just be long and drag out, and you just continue to shoot them and not care and just be in, like, you know, just chill in your frame that doesn't die, because nothing works on the Archons. There's no gameplay for you to really do besides have a weapon that doesn't run out of ammo and don't die. Like, those are the mechanics of the fight, really, because the damage attenuation is so egregious. And what that actually does is, I feel, restrict the fight more, because what attenuation is supposed to do is make the fight closer between a player who's very experienced and does a ton of damage, like all of the experienced players, myself, and so on and so forth, and from people who are new to the content. So even if you are new to the content, say if you're using like my new player stuff, all that I was using on like Nezha or on Zephyr and stuff, the experience is still going to be very bad, because for attenuation, you are going to have extremely low damage, because the other allies in your party are making attenuation go ridiculous. So if you shoot the enemy with your Fulmin, that is like, or like even like some basic stuff that you've gotten out of like Kuvaliches and stuff that don't have maxed out mods, it's still going to do comparatively like nothing to that enemy, because everything starts to do nothing to that enemy who has attenuation running 1,000,000 miles an hour to get that damage down as low as it possibly can go. So what you end up with is everyone feeling like they aren't doing much unless you do the thing where you get around attenuation and do like the jump scaring thing, which just means the whole fight feels bad the whole time. Like, it's not better for the person that's there with their like weaker gun. It's just now bad for everyone. And the weird thing is that there is a solution that he has already done. And they addressed this on stream, where like they can't just make a Jackal fight for all of the Archons, because like the Jackal is like a large development undertaking, and like that very good, like more complex fight that has stages and all these things, that takes a lot of development time, and like they wouldn't have time to do it, and they just wanted to convert the Archons into a fight you can do with your Warframes, and that's all fine. But the point where I take issue is that, from my perspective at least, the Archons have all of the mechanics necessary to be like interesting enough fights, but the attenuation is not helping with that. The attenuation is actually actively working against that, because comparatively, the fights that we have that are really good, like the Angels and the Jackal, are done in segments. When with the Jackal, it's like the individual legs and everything, and with the Angels, they have segmented bars where they have 3 different segments of the bar, and you do the damage part of the Angel, then it goes down, and you do the inside part with your Operator, which has like some interesting things to it, where you can do high DPS with your Operator and then like skip the orb phase, or do the orb phase, which helps you get a lot more damage, and then kill the Angel. And like that fight is like engaging because it has you doing mechanics. And just with the example of Boreal has mechanics, but he just does them randomly, as opposed to doing them at specific points of the fight that force you to interact with them. And what I mean by that is, if Boreal's HP was segmented, let's say it's in 3 parts, there's a very easy, or I guess it would actually have to be like 4 parts. It's 4 parts. You do the first part of Boreal's HP, and he becomes invincible, backs up, and summons his guys, the guys with the canisters in their chest and everything, and you have to kill them so you can do the next thing. Okay. And then you do the next part, and he runs. Cool. You go and do the Deacon part, which is like mechanics, like rushing through the mission quickly. You get that door open. You go in. You do the HP bar for Boreal, and then he summons his big pyramid. And then you have to shoot the top of the pyramid and shoot the other 4, like the 4 bottom corners of the pyramid, and then he becomes vulnerable again. You shoot his last HP bar and get through it, and then you rip the crystal out of him. So you've engaged with all of the mechanics that are already present on Boreal, and you could even like add another stage to that and include his scream, and have like a specific thing that needs to be done in order to stop his scream besides just shooting him. But like, Boreal has all of those mechanics as designed already. He just has attenuation, and it's assumed that it's going to take you a long time of just shooting him a bunch, and he'll do them sometimes. but you could just make the fight more consistent with chunks of health. And that would also mean that all players experience that fight very consistently across, because instead of interacting with a HP bar that just wants to go down very slowly, you're interacting with chunks of HP that you could eliminate very slowly, or you could eliminate them very quickly, and those chunks of HP could be set at like a reasonable threshold. Say, for example, you look like, because like weapons are divided between like different like DPS thresholds, right? Where you could make it so like, okay, well, you need to be able to do 5 million damage per HP threshold, right? So you need to do 5 million damage at each different point. And for a lot of players, if they're using like a poorly modded weapon, it's going to take them a while to do that. But that's what a damage check is. You set what the check is supposed to be, and if they can do it, great. And if they can do it fast, awesome. That's what a damage check is. Right now, what a damage attenuation does is it checks your damage and then lowers it because you're doing too much damage, which I would argue is just not good for the game. Like, what is doing too much damage? That just undermines what you farmed for, right? Like, if we as players are doing too much damage and DE's answer to that is to lower our damage, that means that as like a core issue from DE's perspective with the game, we do too much damage, which means that there is a larger problem that needs to be addressed. You can't address the problem through damage attenuation because that just feels bad. If the numbers overall of the game have to be lowered to get the actual like desired outcome that you want, then the design needs to change or the game needs to change. Like the way that we interact with damage as a whole and like the vast differences in how weapons are balanced has to be what is addressed there. Because damage attenuation just makes you feel bad about investing too much. And like you feel like you get nothing out of like what you've invested in. Like, oh, I invested in like, I don't know, the Kuva core attack, and I am a rapid fire weapon, and it figures out what my attenuation figures out what my DPS is super fast, and then lowers it down to be nothing. It's like, okay, well, I put 5 Forma into this Kuva core attack. I have all the best mods in the game, and then the game just lowered my damage down to what it would be if I had a no Forma build and I was just shooting it the same exact way. Like, that feels bad. Like, that actively is like, why did I even bother investing in this weapon? This weapon doesn't do anything. And it's the same way across all the things that have attenuation on them. It's like your weapon doesn't do the damage that you gave it. You gave the weapon the damage in order to be able to kill the enemies with the amount of damage you gave the weapon. And if that's too much, the game just tells you, no, it's actually 20 instead of 200. And that just feels bad. Like there's no reason to like do it that way instead of just having it be a check where it's like, okay, you need a weapon that can do 5 million damage quickly. It's like, okay, cool. I have my Redeemer Prime right here that I've built for heavy attacks, and it just like shoots out a bunch of damage. Like Warframe in general is a toolbox game where it's like, I need a thing that can do X. Okay, I'm gonna go get that thing. What attenuation does is right now, bugged maybe. You need like the Kuva Heck, and you need to use its alt fire with this particular build and get a headshot and do all these things so you can like jump scare the attenuation and not have to deal with it. Like, that's the fastest way. But assuming attenuation did what it was supposed to do, you would go through all that trouble on the Kuva Heck and build it all the way up, and then you would do like this shot that is supposed to deal like 20 million damage, and you would put that into Boreal's face, pull the trigger, and his health bar wouldn't barely move because this fight is supposed to take a long time. And that is super arbitrary and doesn't feel good at all. Like, why did I go through all the trouble of building this to do 20 million damage when I'm not allowed to do more than like 400 DPS? Like, there's not a fight. It's just a timer. Like, it turns like the fight with Boreal into a waiting game. Like, I just have to wait until I'm allowed to do more damage, I guess. Like, you might as well sit in the room with, like, if attenuation is working appropriately, where it's like, well, the fight needs to take a certain amount of time. Like, well, can I just walk into the room with Boreal and let him shoot me for 2 minutes and then shoot him once? Is that the same? Because the only difference is that I'm constantly pumping bullets into him and nothing's happening if attenuation was actually doing what it is supposed to do, which I feel like is not any fun at all. And that's like the main issue I have with attenuation is like it doesn't feel like it's making anything better. Like nothing, no piece of content that it's on do I feel like it improves. And like the sisters and the liches are the same way, where those are mechanicless fights, like pretty inherently. Like the sisters have a little bit where like they have like Warframe proxies with them, and like they can copy you and do some interesting things like that. And like those are mechanics, right? Where like if you shot the sister to half health and then they summon a copy of you and you needed to be able to defeat your frame in order to then defeat them, that's a mechanic. That's like, hey, okay, well, you've done a bunch of damage to me. Now I'm going to summon Shadow Link. Now you have to fight Shadow Link. You have to be able to kill your own frame in order to finish me off. That's a mechanic. But it's not presented as one in like a clean way that is good. It's just a bunch of damage attenuation, and like those things like happen sometimes. And they just become annoying whenever it's like, okay, my weapons don't do the damage they're supposed to do. I'll shoot you a lot until you die, I guess. And that just feels bad. Yeah, damage attenuation I feel like is one of the failures of the design of Warframe. Like there are a lot of good things in this game, not to be just like fully negative. Obviously, like I just talked about, I think the potential AoE changes that they would do would actually be good for the game. There's plenty of other things where like I think the werewolf frame looks cool and all this stuff. I don't want to be like, you know, all the comments are like, you're so negative. No, I'm negative about damage attenuation. That's what I'm negative about because I feel like it makes the game worse. But yeah, I think attenuation has a million better solutions that they could do instead. All of the Archons have individual mechanics that they could do and have health chunks, as opposed to just having a health bar that is very annoying and needs very specific things in order for you to bypass it. And we bypass more mechanics now than if the Archon health was just segmented. Anyway, that is going to do it. Sorry for the extremely long-winded discussion about damage attenuation. I just feel very strongly about it, and that it is making the game worse. But yeah, that's going to do it. General information and stuff. Worth noting, I am not going to have stuff for Revenant. I am going to be gone for a week starting on this upcoming Monday. So don't expect me to be doing Revenant stuff because I'm not going to be here until like the following Monday. Going and doing like TwitchCon and a bunch of other things. You'll probably see it on Twitter. I'll probably post photos and stuff there. So follow me there if you want to see that stuff. But otherwise, that's going to do it. Enjoy some videos while I'm gone. Those will be up on the YouTube, though. And I will hopefully see you tonight on stream, which I will be over at twitch.tv/Brozime. Otherwise, that's going to do it. Goodbye. Also, hey everyone, we have a new outro. So, sorry this has taken a little while to get going for those of you that are over on the Patreon, but thank you so much to all of the $10+ patrons. Brutus, Salazar, Dylan Dworsky, Efrain, Jeremy Stevens, Joshua Adams, Malik X. Williams, Mitchda, Trent Hallmark, Victor, and Zach Zahner. Thank you very much for being $10 patrons. And also, thank you very much to just all the patrons in general. It's been really awesome to try and get this big website stuff off the ground. And I hope you guys continue to support me and are enjoying the content that is going up there, including this video. So yeah, it's been a fantastic time so far, and hopefully we can just keep it going. Have a good one, everybody. Hopefully you guys enjoy the new outro as well. I think it came out pretty nice. And that should do it. Later, all.